We'll come right down onto our backs, letting the palms turn up to the ceiling, feet flat on the floor. And just let the shoulders fall open. Feeling the pads of the toes in contact and connection with the floor. Closing the eyes if they aren't already. Begin to take 3 deep inhales, filling up the lungs completely. And then emptying out the lungs on the exhale. 2 more breaths here. Melting, releasing tension. Dropping into the body, into the mind. And let the breath return back to its natural state. In through the nose, out through the nose. And you can keep the eyes closed, but we're heel-toeing the feet out to the edges of your mat. And just letting the knees rock from side to side. Nothing too much this morning as we get started here. I'm just inviting some movement into the body. And then come back up to center. We're hugging both knees into the chest, wrapping the arms around the shins. And let's take a few deep breaths, sending the breath down to the low back. Continue hugging your right knee and extend that left leg out long, just letting it rest on the ground in a comfortable position. Begin to roll that ankle, drawing circles clockwise. And then counterclockwise. And then point and flex the foot, drawing the toes up to the shins. Feeling that stretching and strengthening throughout the lower leg. Very nice. Bending that left knee to take the foot flat to the floor. We're going to lace the fingers behind the right thigh and then inhale to straighten the knee, exhale to bend the knee. Very nice. Release that foot to the floor for just a moment here, just to notice the differences between right and left side. And then hug both knees up to the chest once again, wrapping the arms around the shins. Taking a few breaths here, sending that inhale right down into the low back. Continue hugging the left knee into the chest as you extend the right leg out long. Go ahead and draw circles with the toe in a clockwise direction. And then let's pause and reverse that direction. And then we'll point and flex the foot. And then bending your right leg, take the sole of the foot to the floor, lacing the fingers behind the left leg. We'll inhale to straighten the knee, exhale to bend the knee. And let's flow between these two positions for a few rounds here. And last one, takes the foot to the floor. Keep the soles of the feet together as you let the knees fall open. You can take one hand on the chest, one hand on the belly, but let the elbows rest on the earth below you. And as we let go here, we're going to be here for about 5 breaths and just releasing any tension in the neck, the jaw, the pelvic floor. If you find that this is too much for the hips, you can support the thighs by placing blocks underneath the thighs. And then we'll come back up to center, swapping out the hand positions, taking the other hand up to the chest, the other hand down to the belly, and we'll heel toe the feet out to the sides of your mat, letting both knees fall inward. So if you need a little bit of support for the hips, you can walk the feet together, letting the knees rest on each other. Or if you would like more of a stretch, you can walk the feet away from each other to let the knees just fall inward, letting gravity take over. And let's hold here for a few more breaths. Very nice. Heel toe your feet back into the middle of your mat. We'll roll over onto our right side, creating a little bit of energy in the body, and then press your way up to a seated position. So we'll be in sitting for a little while. So if you find that sitting up on a blanket or a block is helpful, you can do that. And feel free to change your position at any point throughout this sequence here. So we'll take both soles of the feet together. You can get the heels pretty close to the groin, or you can get them away from the body. Place the hands on the ankles as you sit up tall through the crown of the head. And let's take a few moments here to take the thumbs inside the feet on the arches of the feet and just kind of go through and rub all along the arch of the foot, pressing in with the thumbs, giving yourself a moment for self-care. Our feet do so much for us, and we tend to not give them as much attention as they deserve. All right. Keeping that right foot or that right knee bent, extend that left leg out front and just to the side slightly. We're turning that upper body to face that foot as you exhale to walk the hands forward. Your hands can either come to the back of the knee, the shin, or the toes, whatever is accessible to you. We just want to keep that chest lifted. Let's find a few breaths here, just relaxing, letting go, finding that balance between effort and ease. And then release, walking it back up to center, swapping the feet out. Sole of the foot comes into the thigh, left leg or right leg extends out long. Squaring off those shoulders to face that foot, begin to walk the fingertips forward. Anchor your right hip down to the ground, and you can grab onto the back of the knee, the shin, or the foot. Excuse me. And let's just take a few breaths here, relaxing, letting go. And then we can unhinge here. Kickstanding the hands back behind you. We'll take both feet flat to the floor. Letting both knees fall into the center for just a moment like we did when we were on our backs. And then come back up to center here. And then trying to keep the opposite hip pinned down to the ground. We're going to lower the legs off to the right, keeping that left hip down. You won't be able to go very far, and that's okay. And then we'll come back up to center, other side. Holding for just a moment, finding that edge. And then back up. And let's take two more on each side here. And last ones. Back up. Now doing the same thing, but we'll let that hip pop up off the ground and see how much lower the knees can go when you do that. So it goes to show you that a lot of times when we think we're using our hips, how much of our low back is being incorporated. Not that that's wrong. It's called the lumbo-pelvic rhythm. It's what our body should be doing. But sometimes it's nice to isolate more of those hip joint movements. Okay. And then come back to center here. We're going to walk it up. All right. So legs come out to the sides here. So we're taking a little bit of a wider seated position than we were with that first one. Knees point up to the sky. Inhale, lift up through the crown. Exhale to walk the fingertips forward. So as you roll the toes open, you're going to get a little more of an inner thigh stretch. Sometimes people like to take the elbows down to the floor if that's accessible, but that's not the goal of the pose. It's simply just to find your edge, your stretch. And if you are dying to just know what this pose feels like, just to rest in with a neutral spine, you can take the elbows onto a block. And wherever you are, let's just hold here for a few more breaths. And then unhinge from the hips. If you were using a block, you can move that off to the side. Once again, taking the sole of the foot into, let's bend that right knee. And then the back of the hand comes down onto the floor inside the knee. Reach that right arm up and over, side body stretch. We'll try to roll that upper shoulder back behind you to take the gaze up to the ceiling. Breathing deeply into the ribs. Nourishing all of those muscles with new oxygen, new blood flow. And then release to come back up, planting that hand behind you and reaching that hand up, come up onto the shins. And then exhale, drops the hips back down. Other side, bending that knee, extending the right leg out long, out to the side. Take the back of the hand inside the knee, onto the floor. Reach that left arm up and over. Feel that side body stretch. And then roll that upper shoulder back, taking the gaze up to the ceiling. Sending the breath into all those little rib spaces. And then coming back up through center. Let's plant the hand back behind you and send the hips and the arm up toward the sky. Holding here for a couple of breaths. And then your exhale takes the hips back down to the ground. Very nice. All right, so we will come on to our hands and knees for tabletop here in a moment. But let's just stretch out those wrists. So we're doing some wrist rolls in one direction. And then the opposite direction. And then open and close the fingers, making little fists here, stretching out all the joints of the fingers. Okay, and then this one's pretty fun. So we'll lace the fingers together and then draw figure eights with the knuckles. Going in one direction, moving with intention here. And then pause and see if you can reverse that direction. This one is kind of a little brain teaser here. Very nice. All right, and then we'll take the palms together, heart center, draw the palms down as you kind of lift the elbows up. So it's just, you're counter stretching here just to create space throughout the forearms. And then release to flip the palms, taking the backs of the hands together, lifting the hands up as the elbows drop down this time. Okay, and then finally, reach your left hand out in front of you. Let the fingertips drop down to the floor. Take the other hand and pull on that wrist, but pull it toward, you're kind of moving it down and toward the pinky. Okay, keep that elbow straight. You're getting a really intense forearm stretch here. So kind of find that edge to where it's uncomfortable, but you're still feeling a stretch. And then release that hand, and we'll take the other side. Extend that right arm out long. Flip the fingertips down toward the floor. And we're going to apply a little overpressure here and then guide that hand over toward the pinky. Keep the elbow straight. Very nice. And then we can release that hand. And let's work our way down onto the hands and knees here in tabletop. And you can get your blocks up at the top of your mat, just so we have them nearby. Okay, so coming down into tabletop, stack your shoulders over the wrists, the hips over the knees, and drop that belly down. Inhale to look up. Exhale to round the spine for cat. And flow between these two positions for a few rounds here, just moving that breath through the body. Very nice. Okay, so a couple of positions here. We're taking the knees out wide, keep the soles of the feet together, rock the hips back to the heels, letting the forehead come down onto the ground for just a moment here. Relaxing, letting go. Feeling the belly press into the thighs as you inhale. And as you exhale, relax the pelvic floor. And then come up onto those fingertips overhead and then peel the forehead off of the ground. Walk the fingertips off to the left side of your mat. And then anchor that right hip down to the ground, creating a side body stretch. Breathe. And then come back through center. Take those fingertips off to the right side of your mat. Anchor the hip down into the ground. And then we'll come back to center. Go ahead and press your way up into your tabletop here. This time taking the feet out to the edges of your mat and the knees come in. Okay. This time we're rocking back and up. So you won't be able to go all the way back. We're just getting a different type of stretch in the hips, the knees, the low back. Very nice. And then come back up, get the hips right over the knees into a neutral tabletop. And we're going to tuck the toes and send the hips up and back into that first downward facing dog. Keep a long line in the spine. And then we can alternate pedaling right heel, left heel, just creating some space throughout the back of the legs. Okay, and then take the gaze up between the hands. As you exhale, shift the shoulders over the wrists for high plank. And then send the hips up and back into your downward facing dog. We're going to take that 2 more times. Exhale, high plank. Breathing. Inhale, lift the hips up and back. And then last one, exhale, high plank. And then send the hips up and back. Taking the gaze up between the hands. Let's march the feet up to meet the hands at the top of your mat. Pretty generous bend in the knees here as you let the belly rest on the thighs. Let the head hang heavy. If you wish, you can grab opposite hand to opposite elbow and just sway from side to side here. And then release the hands to the floor and go ahead and roll it on up. One spinal segment at a time until the crown of the head is the last to come up. Spiraling the palms to face forward for our mountain pose. Draw the shoulder blades down and back and stack the ears over the shoulders. Take the hands to heart center as we shift our weight onto the right foot, taking the sole of the foot to the inner shin or the inner thigh for tree pose. Really pressing that knee to the back of the room as you grow the branches up and out. Sliding the shoulder blades down into your back pockets. Take a few breaths here. And then your exhale steps that left foot back to open up into warrior two, sinking down into the front thigh. Front palm flips up, exhale, reverse warrior, nice side bend here. And then come back up through center, warrior two, sink it down again. Take that front elbow to front thigh as you come into extended side angle. Hold for a couple of breaths here. Pivot on that back foot to find your runner's lunge. You can take the fingertips to the floor or use the blocks to keep the chest lifted. Drive that back heel down toward the floor. Lift the kneecap to feel that stretch in the front of the hip. Bend that knee, taking the foot to the floor. And then we're going to rotate that foot in and then out. Trying to keep the pelvis from rocking back and forth too much so that the motion is truly coming from the hip. So it's almost like you're touching the foot to the outside of the mat and the inside of the mat. Okay. All right. And then come back to center here, tuck that back toe to hover the knee. Keep that left hand planted on the block as you inhale to float the right arm up. Try to keep that right hip in line with the knee. And then unwind from that twist, taking the hand to the block. We're going to straighten that front knee for forward fold triangle and then bend. So you don't need to completely straighten it if that's too aggressive on that hamstring. Listen to your body. Very nice. And then we'll bend that knee, coming back into the lunge, moving the blocks off to the side. Stepping that right foot back behind you, high plank. Hold. Alternate tapping out left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. Very nice. And then send the hips up and back to find your downward facing dog, a pose of rest, spreading the fingertips out, dropping the shoulders away from the ears, and let the head hang heavy. Take the gaze up between the hands, marching the feet up to meet the hands at the top of your mat for the other side. Letting the belly rest on the thighs. Head hangs heavy. And then roll it up, straightening the knees, one spinal segment at a time until the crown of the head is the last to come up. Spiral the palms to face forward for just a moment. Now here in our mountain pose, let's close the eyes and find some balance. Grounding down into the soles of the feet. Lift the kneecaps, tuck the chin in. Take the hands to heart center as you open up the eyes. And then shift your weight onto the left leg. So we're taking the other side here, bending that knee, take the sole of the foot to the inner shin or the inner thigh. Once you get there, press that right knee to the back of the mat. Reaching the fingertips up and out. Find softness in the shoulders. And then take the hands to heart center. Step your right foot back behind you to open up into our warrior two on the other side. Reaching those arms out long, sinking down into that front thigh. Warrior two, nice strong posture here. And then flip that front palm up to the ceiling. Exhale, reverse warrior. Takes your back hand to your back knee. And then come back through center. Front elbow comes to the front thigh as you reach that back hand up. Extended side angle. And then spiral around on that back foot to find your runner's lunge. So we need to reposition the feet so that the feet are on railroad tracks. Go ahead and sink the hips down toward the ground. Drive that back heel and then straighten that knee. Keep the chest lifted and hold here for a couple of breaths. Good. Go ahead and bend that back knee to the floor and untuck the toe. We're going to pivot the foot in and across to the other side of your mat and then out to the outside of your mat. And just alternate here. Very nice. Come back to center, tuck that back toe and lift the knee. Anchor the hand onto the block on the right side, and then inhale to sweep that left arm up, but try to get that left hip in line with the knee. So we're kind of pulling it in a little bit. And then go ahead and unwind from that twist. We're going to straighten that front knee as much as you can, and then exhale to bend. And let's flow between that. And finally, let's release that knee to the ground. Untuck the toe and let's sweep the left leg back behind you, coming down into our tabletop. You can move those blocks off to the side for a moment, and let's take a couple of rounds of cat-cow here. Very nice. Shift your weight onto that left hand. Inhale to float the right arm up, and then exhale to thread the needle, taking the arm through that space. Let your right ear rest on the ground, and try to keep the right and left hip with each other. If you want a little more active in this pose, you can push the back of the hand to the floor, breathe into that shoulder space. Into the left hand to unwind from that twist. Let's reach that right arm up and then exhale to take it to the floor. Other side, shifting onto your right hand. Inhale to float the left arm up and then exhale, sweeping it through, taking that right or that left ear down to the ground. Pressing into the right hand to unwind. And then exhale takes the hand to the floor. Walk your fingertips forward slightly. We're going to tuck those toes to send the hips up and back into our downward facing dog. Okay. Drop the heels down. Take a couple of breaths here. Trying to keep that spine long. Relax the shoulders. Root that left foot into the ground as you float the right leg up for three-legged dog. Exhale to take the knee up toward the nose and then rotate that knee outward so that we can come down and rest the shin on the ground for pigeon pose. Walk that back leg so that the hip, the knee, and the foot are in line. Okay, so you can choose to stay here, or we can come into this more restorative type pose where we come down onto the elbows, or you can stack the forearms to rest the head. You can also use a block to bring the floor up to you, and you can also use a block or a blanket underneath the hip. And really take the time to find comfort here in the pose so that you can truly enjoy it. Okay. And as you start to settle in, begin to deepen the breath, breathing into those spaces that are causing you a little bit of restriction. And if the mind starts to wander, kindly bring the attention back to the breath. And as you finish up that last exhale, go ahead and press yourself up onto the hands. If you were using any props, you can move them off to the side. Okay. Now, as you're here, let's bend that back knee. That might be enough of a stretch for you, but if you would like a little more of a challenge, take that right hand and reach it back behind you to grab onto the top of the foot. And you're in control here. You can kind of pull that leg. You can even grab the ankle. You can grab onto a pant leg, whatever is accessible to you. And of course, honoring the body. If this is uncomfortable, just come right out of it. And then release that foot to the floor. Tuck that back toe and hover to step the right foot back into our downward facing dog. Alternate pedaling right heel, left heel. Just noticing the differences between the sides. And then shifting your weight onto the right foot, let's float the left leg up for three-legged dog. Exhale, drop the knee to nose, and then rotate that knee outward, taking the shin down to the ground. Try to get that back hip, knee, and foot in line with each other. You start to settle in here. Grab any props that you need on this side. Maybe a blanket or a block under the hip. Maybe you want a block or a blanket for underneath the arms. You can stay here keeping the chest lifted or work your way down onto the floor. Once you get there, you can just let the forehead rest. Finding that edge between ease and discomfort. And try to find some stillness here. Closing the eyes. And let's be here for a few breaths. And then press into those elbows to lift that upper body. Gradually releasing from the pose. Moving that block or blanket off to the side if you were using it. And then tucking that back toe, we're going to hover the knee and step the left foot back into our downward dog. You can pedal those heels out, just finding some balance between the sides. Feeling that rush of blood flow come back into the hip, the leg. And then we can lower the knees gently to the floor. Okay. And then we'll sit back on the heels for a moment. So this pose, hero pose, is enough in itself for stretching the tops of the feet. If you are ever experiencing some tightness underneath the foot and the calf, the back of the heels, this might be a nice opportunity to tuck the toes. So really spreading out all 10 toes, even grounding that pinky toe down to the floor. For toes pose, love it. We're going to be here for a couple of moments. If at any point you would like to untuck the toe, feel free to do so. Very nice. And then we can come back down onto the hands, untuck the toes if they were, and just tap the tops of the feet just to bring that rush of blood flow back into the body, back into the feet. Okay, and then we'll work our way down onto our backs here. So if you want to have anything nearby for your Shavasana, your final resting pose, feel free. And we definitely want to have our yoga straps handy. Okay, so come right down onto your backs. We're gonna hug both knees into the chest just to kind of release from all that work that we just did. Very nice. Grab onto the tops of the knees and just make little circles with the low back. And then pause for a moment and we can reverse your direction. Nice job. Release the feet to the floor. Hands come down by your side as you send the hips up for bridge pose, lacing the fingers underneath those hips. You can snuggle the shoulder blades together to expand across the chest. Continue lifting up at the hips, but draw the belly button into the spine to release any pressure from the low back. If this is uncomfortable at all, you always have the option to release the hands. And then go ahead and release and lower it down. One spinal segment starting from the top, working your way all the way down to the tailbone. And once you get there, you can go ahead and grab onto that yoga strap and loop it around the left foot, the ball of the toes, and then straightening the knee, drawing the toes up to the shins, creating some space in the back of the leg. Let's hold here for 3 breaths. Let's grab that strap and place it in the left hand, both ends of the strap. Keep that right hip glued down to the ground as you lower that leg out to the side. And then work your way back up to center. Let's swap the feet out. Draw the toes up to the shins. Take those straps into the right hand as you exhale, softly lower down to the right. And find your way back up to center, releasing that yoga strap off to the side. Arms come out into a T position. Keeping the knees stacked one on top of the other. Lower both knees off to the right side of your mat. Take the gaze down the left arm. And relax, let go, breathe. And find your way back to center. Slowly lowering the legs off to the left side. And take your gaze down the right arm. Working your way back to center, let's enter into our Shavasana. If you need to take any other stretch or pose that your body might be craving, feel free to do so right now. Otherwise, you can extend the legs out long and let the toes just fall open. Let the backs of the hands rest on the floor. If we kind of tuck the shoulder blades in close, that allows our heart space to be open, to give and receive love. Gently tucking the chin, creating space in the back of the neck. I'm going to focus on the breath, relaxing every part of the body, feeling weightlessness in the arms and the legs, and the shoulders all the way down to the fingertips, and the hips all the way down to the tips of the toes. Light as a feather. And then bring that attention back inward, back to the heart. Picture a green light radiating from this space. This green light of love and happiness. And as it gets bigger and brighter and warmer, it expands down the body, outward, off the body, until you have a sphere of green light all the way around the body, radiating brightly outward. And as you feel the body's warmth, maybe a vibration or a tingling, begin to focus on the breath, moving that energy through the body with every inhale and exhale. And as you start to invite some small movements back to the body, reach the fingertips out so that the palms are open. And as you bend the elbows, picture scooping up some of that green light and bringing it back into the heart, back to the self. Creating this cycle of giving and receiving. It feels good to give love, but also to receive. And bend both knees, taking the soles of the feet flat to the floor. And let's roll over onto the right side, moving with ease, moving with peace. And gently working your way up to a seat. Grounding down and lifting up through the top of the head. And taking the hands to heart center. And may you give and receive love.